He'd been robbed. Yeah. What do you know about this that you ain't telling, Sheriff? You got the same facts I got. I ain't talking about facts. Do you think this whole mess has moved south? Bell shook his head. I don't know. You got a dog in this hunt? Not really. A couple of kids from my county that might be sort of involved that ought not to be. Sort of involved. Yeah. Are we talking kin? No. Just people from my county. People I'm supposed to be looking after. He handed the transponder unit to the sheriff. What am I supposed to do with this? It's Maverick County property. Crime scene evidence. The sheriff shook his head. Dope, he said. Dope. They sell that shit to school kids. It's worse than that. How's that? School kids buy it. I won't talk about the war, neither. I was supposed to be a war hero, and I lost a whole squad of men. Got decorated for it. They died, and I got a medal. I don't even need to know what you think about that. There ain't a day I don't remember it. Some boys I know come back, they went on to school up at Austin on the GI Bill. They had hard things to say about their people. Some of them did. Called them a bunch of rednecks and all such as that. Didn't like their politics. 2 generations in this country is a long time. You're talking about the early settlers. I used to tell them that having your wife and children killed and scalped and gutted like fish has a tendency to make some people irritable, but they didn't seem to know what I was talking about. I think the 60s in this country sobered some of them up. I hope it did. I read in the papers here a while back, some teachers come across a survey that was sent out back in the 30s to a number of schools around the country. Had this questionnaire about what was the problems with teaching in the schools. And they come across these forms. They'd been filled out and sent in from around the country answering these questions. And the biggest problems they could name was things like talking in class and running in the hallways, chewing gum, copying homework, things of that nature. So they got one of them forms that was blank and printed up a bunch of them and sent them back out to the same schools. 40 years later. Well, here come the answers back. Rape, arson, murder, drugs, suicide. So I think about that. Because a lot of the time, ever when I say anything about how the world is going to hell in a handbasket, people will just sort of smile and tell me I'm getting old, that it's one of the symptoms. But my feeling about that is that anybody that can't tell the difference between raping and murdering people and chewing gum has got a whole lot bigger of a problem than what I've got. 40 years is not a long time, neither. Maybe the next 40 of it will bring some of them out from under the ether, if it ain't too late. Here a year or two back, me and Loretta went to a conference in Corpus Christi, and I got set next to this woman. She was the wife of somebody or other, and she kept talking about the right wing this and the right wing that. I ain't even sure what she meant by it. The people I know are mostly just common people. Common as dirt, as the saying goes. I told her that, and she looked at me funny. She thought I was saying something bad about 'em. But of course that's a high compliment in my part of the world. She kept on. Finally told me, said, I didn't like the way this country is headed. I want my granddaughter to be able to have an abortion. And I said, well, Mom, I don't think you got any worries about the way the country is headed. The way I see it going, I don't have much doubt. But what she'll be able to have an abortion. I'm going to say that not only will she be able to have an abortion, she'll be able to have you put to sleep. Which pretty much ended the conversation. Chigur limped up the 17 flights of concrete steps in the cool concrete well, and when he got to the steel door on the landing, he shot the cylinder out of the lock with the plunger of the stun gun, and opened the door, and stepped into the hallway, and shut the door behind him. He stood leaning against the door, with the shotgun in both hands, listening, breathing no harder than if he'd just got up out of a chair. He went down the hallway, and picked the crushed cylinder out of the floor, and put it in his pocket, and went on to the elevator, and stood listening again. He took off his boots, and stood them by the elevator door, and went down the hallway in his sock feet, walking slowly, favoring his wounded leg. The doors to the office were open onto the hallway. He stopped. He thought that perhaps the man did not see his own shadow on the outer hallway wall, ill-defined but there. Chigurh thought it an odd oversight, but he knew that fear of an enemy can often blind men to other hazards, not least the shape which they themselves make in the world. He slipped the strap from his shoulder and lowered the air tank to the floor. He studied the stance of the man's shadow framed there by the light from the smoked glass window behind him. He pushed the shotgun's follower slightly back with the heel of his hand to check the chambered round and push the safety off. The man was holding a small pistol at the level of his belt. Chigurh stepped into the doorway and shot him in the throat with a load of number 10 shot. These size collectors used to take bird specimens. The man fell back through his swivel chair, knocking it over, and went to the floor and lay there twitching and gurgling. Chigurh picked up the smoking shotgun shell from the carpet and put it in his pocket and walked into the room with the pale smoke still drifting from the canister fitted to the end of the sawed-off barrel. He walked around behind the desk and stood looking down at the man. The man was lying on his back, and he had one hand over his throat, but the blood was pumping steadily through his fingers and out onto the rug. His face was full of small holes, but his right eye seemed intact, and he looked up at Chigurh and tried to speak from out of his bubbling mouth. Chigurh dropped to one knee and leaned on the shotgun and looked at him. "What is it?" he said. "What are you trying to tell me?"